just explain the situation. Maybe there's a time later on to explain the situation when you've got a lawyer and you've talked to your lawyer first and your lawyer's sitting there with you, and then you can explain the situation. Right after you've gotten arrested, not the time to explain the situation. Going back to your question about how do you resist the sort of fairly natural urge to escalate things when the police are trying to escalate things. I've never done much martial arts at all, but there's sort of this principle in martial arts that you train like you fight so that you fight like you train. That you practice these maneuvers over and over again so that when you're being attacked or when you're in a fight, whether it's an organized match or something that happens on the street randomly, that when you're in that adrenaline situation, that you still, because you trained like you fight, then you can fight like you trained. That it's just sort of muscle memory, basically. That when the fist comes from this way, you block and jab, or when the leg comes from this way, you do the automatic thing. And so practicing how you respond to law enforcement contact is the same thing. That, get with your friends, get with your roommates, get with your collective, the people that you organize or socialize or protest with. Take turns practice being the cop, and take turns practice dealing with that. And there's a zillion different interview techniques, interrogation techniques that the police use. Like, oh, we're against the war too. I've always thought that this war was just a bad idea. You can talk to me. We're on the same team. That sort of thing. Oh, your friends already talked to us. They said that you were the ringleader behind all this. So, if you don't say anything, it's all just going to fall on you, man. There's the good cop, bad cop thing, where, one cop's like, we're going to hammer you, we're going to nail you to the cross, you're going to go to prison forever. You're not going to make it out of here on your legs, you're going to have to get reeled out in a wheelchair if you don't start cooperating with us. And then, his friend's like, whoa, man, just take it easy. Like, tell me what's going on, you won't have to deal with him anymore. Everything that you've ever seen or heard on TV about cops, half of it's true, about the techniques that they use to get people to talk. Oh, it'll be better if you just tell me now, because otherwise the judge he's gonna be so pissed at you. Basically any trick you can come up with. There's sort of a joke in.
I can get a deal with the DA. Get you a good deal.
I'll talk to the
DA. Get you a good deal with the DA.
Sweet deal.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah, and so when the future cop is laughing that I'm speaking some truth here. There's a joke I like to tell that how do you tell when a cop is lying? Anybody? His lips are moving.
Hey, man.
I'm not sorry at all. Because, their interest is not your interest. Their interest is to gather evidence, investigate you, and provide information to fucking prosecute you. And the other sort of saying joke that I have is don't let your mouth throw your ass in jail. 9 times out of 10, if they had enough information to arrest, prosecute, and convict you, they wouldn't even bother asking you questions. If they actually see you punching somebody, they're not going to ask you oh, did you punch that guy? They're not going to ask you a bunch of questions. They saw you do something, they're going to take you to jail. If they're asking you questions, there's a reason they're asking you questions, and it's not to benefit you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Specifically, I've been wondering, watching videos of protesters being pulled out of Donald Trump rallies.
Mm-hmm.
Because if those are they're creating a public forum kind of thing, I don't know if you have to get tickets to go to those, but a lot of times people get tickets and they go with the intentions of like disturbing or whatever.
Right.
But then they yell, but they yell just as loud as all the other people that have been cheering are yelling. They're just yelling something different. Because if it's something that's open to the public, are they just gonna get arrested for like disturbing the peace and stuff?
That's sort of a complicated situation. One, you know, it depends on the type of rally and where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those happen in private venues, and so they can, you know, lawfully kick you out. The other thing is that, you know, those are always permitted events. And so somebody with a permit, again, it goes back to, you know, people's rights clashing. The person with the permit is going to prevail over the person without the permit. And so, like she was talking about counter-protest situations, you have the right to counter-protest, to speak your piece, but not, you know, necessarily inside of their rally. You can protest outside, you can, you know, protest a certain distance away depending on the situation.
So if like this is like thinking of the opposite, so like say like there's people that are in like a protest or a march and they have a permit and then they see like a person that they think is an undercover cop, could they like, just like Donald Trump's like security guards, could they like arrest them like citizens arrest?
No, because cops are special. You don't ever want a citizen's arrest a cop.
Yeah.
Folks in Denver have come up with some fairly good tactics for sort of shouting down and pushing out undercovers. I can talk about that later. Shaming them.
Just taking pictures of them and staring at them.
Yeah. Like, oh, we have an undercover cop here.
But, I mean, it goes back to the thing that, like, you know, the police are going to do what the police are going to do. Outside of lawsuits, which, you know, varying degrees of effectiveness, you know, there's not a whole lot to do to restrain the police. I think filming the police, observing the police are all very effective. You know, enough cops are getting, you know, semi-held accountable for shit they did on video, that, you know, they're a little bit more aware that, like, oh, this person here is filming me, this is going to end up on YouTube. That's pretty effective. Having like visible legal observers, National Lawyer Guild's been doing this for a long time. You get the neon yellow hat and a notepad and a camera, and you go and document what the police do. And so that way there's, you know, witnesses, you know, people that are at the protest whose primary function is to observe and document what the police are doing. And so things like that can restrain the police. But otherwise, you know, it's more about thinking about, you know, how can you conduct yourself to minimize the consequences for you? And the long-term consequences, not the, like, you know, maybe I can talk myself out of it and avoid jail today. No, you can't avoid jail. Cop's going to arrest you. You're done. Sorry. All you can do is shut up, not consent to anything, and hope that you have a lawyer that can, you know, help on down the line, because you haven't given up your rights. But, you know, once you've admitted to something, once you've agreed to a search, once you've, you know, even tacitly agreed to a search by, like, not you know, objecting to it, you can't take that back. And so it's important to, you know, memorize those 4 things. Am I being detained? If you're not being detained, leave. No reason for you to stick around. If you are being detained, then you're being detained. I'm not going to answer any questions. I'm going to remain silent. You know, technically, they're supposed to stop asking you questions at that point. Technically, are they going to? No. But, you know, just keep saying it. You know, what's What's your favorite color? I'm not going to answer any questions. I'm going to remain silent. Who's your friend over there? I'm not going to answer any questions. I'm going to remain silent. Motherfucker, you better answer my questions. I'm not going to answer any questions. I'm going to remain silent. You know. I don't consent to a search. You know, police aren't going to be like, can I search your thing? They're going to be like, oh, you mind if I look in your trunk here real quick as they're opening your trunk? And you got to speak up. You got to say, I do not consent to a search. Because otherwise, if you just stand there and you're like, ugh, then your silence is, you know, he's going to take that as consent. He's going to, you know, embellish his report a little bit, and suddenly you've waived your, you know, right to be free from unreasonable searches. So you got to say, I do not consent to a search. He's like, I'm just going to pat you down real quick. Maybe he has a right to pat you down. Maybe he doesn't. Who cares? I do not consent to a search. Mind if we step into your house real quick? Just take a look around? I do not consent to a search. Oh, we've got a warrant. I do not consent to a search. We're going to kick your door in. I do not consent to a search. You don't want to block him? Let him kick your door in. You can fix your door. But you can't fix waiving your Fourth Amendment rights. And then, always and forever, I want to speak to an attorney. You don't have to have an attorney to ask to speak to an attorney. If they're gonna arrest you, if they're gonna keep questioning you, anything like that, they got to give you an attorney. That's what my job is. I'm a public defender. So, you know, if they want to keep asking you questions after you ask for an attorney, you know, they got to call me up. So I got to come help you. You know, those are the four things that, you know, no matter what's going on. I will say, you know, there's situations where maybe it's just not that big a deal. But it can be difficult to tell the situation. I'll give an example from personal experience that one time, almost 10 years ago now, I think, I got pulled over for running a stoplight on my bicycle back when I lived in Texas. And, you know, I'd been involved in a lot of anti-racist, anti-fascist organizing and stuff, and we'd had some high-profile rallies recently. I'd been a media spokesperson for our group at the time. And so I get pulled over for running a stoplight on my bike, just a random day. Cop was bored. I think it was a holiday, so there was nothing going on. Cop stops me and he's like, is it your regular routine to run stoplights on your bicycle? I'm like, no, officer, I just didn't think about it this time. He's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to the bike shop. And, you know, he's asking me just some stupid questions. He's like, I need your license so I need your ID so I can, you know, check for warrants and stuff. I'm like, whatever, here's my license. So he goes back to his car, he runs my license, he comes back, he's like, I don't know why it's taking so long. And he asked me some other, like, kind of stupid questions. You a student here? I was like, yeah. He's like, what are you studying? Like, history. And so it's kind of this, like, boring exchange. You know, I could have been like, I'm not answering any questions, officer. But at the time, you know, he's asking me stupid questions. I just got stopped for a bike infraction. Not that big a deal. He comes back to his car, comes back to me again. He's like, I'm going to have you get off your bike and have a seat on the curb. And this is where I know that, like, this is not just a bike infraction. And then he starts asking me questions about domestic terrorism, protest activities. And so this, like, really innocuous traffic stop just turned into a political investigation into my political activities. And so that's when it sort of clicked with me, is like, oh yeah, all those goddamn Know Your Rights trainings that I've been to. And so then I'm not going to answer any questions, I'm going to remain silent. And so then he gets another cop that shows up, and they're like, she comes over, she's like, what's your name? I'm like, my name's, you know, I give her my name. She's like, what's your date of birth? And I give her my date of birth, and she's like, what are you, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, it's that fucking trap again. They start with something innocuous, what's your name? And then they work up to what they're, you know, really asking about. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not going to answer any questions. I'm going to remain silent. And so then she goes back, and they're like, oh, he's not talking. And they ask me a bunch of questions. They search all my shit without any reason. They found some pamphlets about like immigration rights that I had been carrying around. And at the end of it, you know, at that point I was positive I was going to go to jail that day. I had no idea why, but I was positive I was going to go to jail. So I was just going to shut up and, you know, ride it out. They ended up not arresting me because I don't even know what was going on entirely. But the cop, at the end of it, the cop goes, "I don't know what you did to get on this terrorism watch list. Maybe you do, since you won't answer any of my questions. Maybe it was for passing out those pamphlets or something." I'm like, did you just say that I'm on a terrorist watch list for passing out those pamphlets? Like, that's bananas. But the larger point there is that, you know, there's this situation where, you know, innocent traffic stop, it seems fine to like answer some stupid questions. Yeah, I'm a student. I'm going to the bike shop. It's, you know, it's not my common routine to run stoplights on my bicycle. And then it progresses into something, you know, bigger, something more insidious. And so that's why, you know, practicing, you know, it's not going to come to you maybe instantly every time, but practicing, I'm going to remain silent. I'm not going to answer any questions. I want to speak to an attorney. I don't consent to a search. You know, once you get that down, you can handle any police encounter.